Alicia, can you hear me? Oh, we're on the air? Okay, very good. So I guess we'll start. Ready? Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Larimer County Courthouse. I am Tom Donnelly. I'm the chairman of the Board of County Commissioners this year. I'm joined by John Cafalis, Commissioner from District 1, Steve Johnson, Commissioner from District 2. This is a work session of the Board of County Commissioners and representatives from the Northern Colorado Water Conservancy District Board of Directors. The purpose of this meeting is to discuss the NISP 1041 IGA and the various aspects of that. The Board of County Commissioners recently updated our Memorandum of Understanding with Northern Water to really memorialize certain milestones that have been achieved along the way of permitting this process through the county's 1041 permitting process. The first item of business, I believe, will be introductions of the Board of County Commissioners and of our partners across the table from us, as well as folks from both staffs, I think, that will be participating in this meeting. So would you like to say a few words, Commissioner? Would you like to introduce yourself?
You already did.
Okay, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. John Cafalis, Larimer County Commissioner, District 1.
Steve Johnson, Larimer County Commissioner, District 2.
Bill, why don't we start with you? You guys have a microphone? I think we are broadcasting this out on the internet, so it would be helpful if you use the mic if you can.
I'm Bill Emsley, a member of the Northern Water Board representing Larimer County.
I'm Mike Applegate. I'm chairman of the board for Northern Water and the Northern Integrated Supply Project Water Activity Enterprise, and I'm also a representative of Larimer County.
I'm Dennis Yanchunas, and I'm a representative from Boulder County on the board.
I'm Dave Nettles. I'm on the board as a representative from Weld County.
Thank you, sir. Should we do staff?
Yeah, why don't you want to start with Lori?
Yes. Good afternoon. I'm Lori Cadridge, and I work for Larimer County in the Community Planning and Infrastructure Resources Service Area.
Alicia, I don't know if you can still hear me, Alicia. You may need to turn that mic up if you can. I don't know if it's our problem or your problem back there.
Hi, I'm Bill Rousseau with the Larimer County Attorney's Office.
I'm Mark Peterson. I'm the county engineer.
I'm Stephanie Cecil with Northern Water, a water resources project engineer.
I'm Christy Coleman. I'm a water resources engineer with Northern Water.
I am Peggy Montano, and I'm legal counsel for Northern Water.
And I am Carl Brower with Northern Water, project manager for the Northern Integrated Supply Project.
And Leslie Ellis, community development director for the county. So apologies for some of the setup. Oh, there. Okay. So, okay, everything's working.
The right person.
Yeah. That's much better. So that might be a little bit too loud. Yes.
Is that okay?
Okay.
You're okay?
Okay, so this is really the first such meeting or gathering like this, and it's probably one of several more, so we'll learn from this experience and hopefully make things a little bit smoother the next time around. We do have some agendas that are coming out on the copier. I think you have agendas at least at the front table, but let me just quickly go over what's planned for the next couple of hours on the agenda. So we did introductions, so that's good. We're going to talk a little bit about the meeting purpose here shortly for a few minutes, and then we'll jump into some discussion of the NISP project history, the 1041 Intergovernmental Agreement, the components of the project, and spend some time discussing that. Then we'll talk about the process for reviewing the NISP proposal and preparing an IGA. We'll talk about the public engagement plan and where there are opportunities for public to engage with this process and give feedback. And then there's some time dedicated at the end for you to have some discussion back and forth, anything else that didn't get addressed in those previous topics of the agenda. So as far as our meeting purpose today, we'll explain a bit more in the next steps about what this process is. But as Commissioner Donnelly mentioned, last week the commissioners updated the letter of agreement, the memorandum of understanding milestones for this project. We had an agreement that had been in effect between Northern Water and Larimer County that dated back to 2016 that laid out some milestones and timeframes for working toward an intergovernmental agreement, and that was obviously a bit out of date. And so there was a need to take another look at that process and update it so that we have a 6-month or so window as we move forward working on the different components of an IGA. And when we get a little bit further down into the process, we can talk about the specifics around that process. So that's the backdrop for this initial conversation. And the purpose of this meeting today really is to start the conversation between the two boards, also so that staff can hear direction, so that the public can hear your thoughts and deliberation around how we do a process. We don't have a lot of time on the agenda to get into the details and the merits of the various proposals as part of the project. That will come later. We have another one of these discussions scheduled in September, and between now and then, other opportunities for public engagement and comments. So that will come a bit later too. So again, the purpose for today's meeting is really to start the dialogue, make it known to everybody what the process is and how to engage in that process, hear from you all as board members. You have an opportunity to talk to each other and make sure that we're all in alignment about what that process looks like, and then go from there as the next step. So does that make sense as far as what we're here today for? Okay. So at this point, I think on the agenda, we have time to turn the microphone over to the Northern Water staff to explain the project and the review components so that they can express that to you. So I will pass the microphone.
Yeah, that first one. Should say 01 on it. Sounds like it's on. That's it. No, it's like one falls.
Okay. I just wanted to preface, our discussions today. You've met the board of directors, but we really appreciate you hosting this meeting to get these discussions going. And I just wanted to go back over a little bit. Larimer County and Northern Water have had a long history of cooperation and collaboration on many things related to recreation, safety, emergency management, the Chimney Hollow Dam, Windy Gap Firming Project. We've worked together on that for a long time, our good relationship. And I would say even your Parks Department could trace its roots back to when the Colorado Big Thompson project was built. You saw the value of those project facilities and what they could bring in terms of recreational values to this area, and you've helped develop them into a very important part of the recreation community for around northern Colorado. So as we're just going forward, with the staff making the presentations to you of where we're at right now, Larimer County's been a cooperating agency with us for a long time during the permitting process with the Corps of Engineers. We think we're about to the point of getting a permit. We're confident that we're going to get a positive record or decision with the Corps of Engineers, and we want to continue to work cooperatively with you on the local elements of the project. Both of our staffs have worked really hard together to get this project moving forward. And, we think it's important that we continue moving the ball forward. The state has already put together, through Colorado Parks and Wildlife, a fish and mitigation plan, which went through the Colorado Water Conservation Board. It's a plan that was endorsed by Trout Unlimited, so we're working to get components in place that really have impacts on the county and will be good for the future. I guess my sincere hope in our presentations and our discussions today is that we get an indication from the county that these local elements that we've identified in the MOU and executed by our respective agencies are the main issues that are still up for discussion. But if there are other issues that fall into this discussion that are not, things that weren't discussed in the environmental impact statements, let's get them on the table and let's talk about them and figure out what we need to do about them. I can make a commitment. Our board and our staff are committed to work in cooperation with your staff and with the commission to reach a good outcome on this. And just the final remark would be, I want to frame this kind of in the same venue as when the Colorado Big Thompson project was formulated back in the 1930s. I mean, back then there was a lot of uncertainty, but it took a lot of vision, perseverance, and hard work to bring a project to fruition, and it took a lot of courage. And it paid off. It was good for the future. It provided, our forefathers provided for us a water infrastructure that has served us well. This project is going to do the same thing and help us move us forward for future generations. And I think both our boards need to face the future with that same courage and dedication, and it's going to result in a great outcome for all of us. So again, thank you for hosting this meeting, and I'm going to turn it over and let our staff start laying out what we're thinking right now, and they're here to answer questions, and we'll move forward. Thank you.
You're ready, Stephanie.
All right. Thank you, both directors and commissioners, for being here today. Again, my name is Stephanie Cecil, a water resources engineer with Northern Water. The goal of this presentation is really to give you a brief overview of the Northern Integrated Supply Project. We've been working on this project for a long time, so there's a lot of details out there, and I'm sure you've heard presentations about this before, so I won't get into too many details. And then we'll really be focusing on the three main components that were identified as part of the Memorandum of Understanding: the pipelines, the highway, and the recreation on Glade Reservoir. So for a brief overview, I think I really want to go through kind of the what's, how's, why's, who's paying for it part of NISP. To start with that, just wanted to start with the purpose and needs statement. Really the goal of NISP is to bring 40,000 acre feet of new reliable municipal water to the Front Range and to the project participants to account for both near-term and long-term project needs. Our 15 different participants include 4 water districts and 11 different municipalities that are spread out over the Front Range of Colorado and then out east to Fort Morgan. All of these communities are north and east of the Denver metro area. So how does this work? We have 2 reservoirs that we're building: Glade Reservoir, which is in Larimer County, and a conveyance system associated with that to store Poudre water up in Glade Reservoir and then bring that Poudre water to our 15 different participants. Over in Weld County, we have Gailton Reservoir going in and a conveyance system associated with that project that's bringing South Platte water up into Gailton Reservoir.
So, Stephanie, can you back up a slide?
Yeah, definitely.
I don't know if you want to do questions now or not. I just want to see which entities, partner entities, are actually in Larimer County.
So Fort Collins Loveland Water District serves entirely in Larimer County. And then Windsor actually serves, their water service is just in Weld County, but they're right on the border between.
And partially in Larimer.
Yes.
What
exactly.
percentage of the homes in Fort Collins, maybe you don't know this, are serviced by the Fort Collins Loveland Water District?
I do not know the percentage.
Do you know that, Mike? Do you know that?
It's a little over 20,000 residents in Fort Collins areas.
And I think our county fairgrounds is that right? They're served by Fort Collins Loveland Water? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And I forgot to mention here that these 15 different participants are the ones paying the freight for this project, so they're the ones who are completely paying, these water users are paying for this project. If you have questions, feel free to ask them. So here, just wanted to run through, we show a lot of lines on the screen, but we don't always show where the water's actually moving. So here you can see that the arrow, we have Poudre water going up into Glade, and then from Glade, we have a few different conveyance routes. One of them is through a pipeline, and I'll get into this a little bit more later. And then the other option is through the Poudre River, and then connecting into our other pipeline, blending that water that's coming through there. And over on the east, we have South Platte water that's going from the South Platte River up into Gailton Reservoir. And then from Gailton Reservoir, we're actually delivering the water to the New Cache and Larimer and Weld canals. So those canals typically get Poudre River water. We're doing an exchange to instead take that Poudre River water, store that in Glade, and have these folks get South Platte water instead. So I'm going to go back and give a little bit of a timeline on the NISP project. Really, this project started back in the 80s with the purchase of the Poudre River rights, went through a water court here in Colorado. Then we had South Platte water rights that were purchased and also went through water court here in Colorado. In the 90s, those two projects were kind of combined into one. So instead of two different projects, combined it into this Northern Integrated Supply Project. From there, in the 90s and early 2000s, really kind of a participant group was formed to work on this project. A initial alternatives analysis was done to figure out what kind of options are really available to utilize these water rights. And then from there, really NISP as a project started, you can say maybe in 2002, with the core participant group formed. And then in 2004, that's when the NEPA process started. So that's when we started working with the Army Corps of Engineers to go through that entire process. So really it started 15 years ago, working with the Army Corps of Engineers. Our draft environmental impact statement came out in 2008, and then through a lot of refinement and really looking at water quality more. In 2015, a supplemental draft EIS came out. After that came out in the 2016-2017 timeframe, that's when what we call our conveyance refinement was added. So that is the adding the water down the Poudre River, improving flows through that part of the project. That was added in 2016-2017. We had our state fish and wildlife mitigation plan that Director Applegate was talking about. That was approved in 2017. And then in 2018, we had our final EIS come out. Another big milestone in 2018 was a reservoir release bill that actually that went through the state legislature here in Colorado to allow us to shepherd that water down the Poudre and not let other users take that water out after we put it back in. So it really protects that in-stream flows that we're going to have released from Glade.
Stephanie, when you referenced that Northern purchased the water rights, South Platte and Poudre River back in the 80s, were those water rights not adequate to accommodate the acre feet that are the acre feet of storage that's being proposed for Glade as well as Gallatin? Because in recent newspaper accounts, there's been indication that there's a need to purchase additional water rights through farms in Weld County. Could you help me understand that better?
Yeah, definitely. So that's not, the water rights we got are adequate. What we are trying to do is an exchange with those farmers. So instead of just having an agreement with the irrigation companies to send water to them, we're having agreements with individual farmers and landowners. And we're looking at different methods to do that. And one of those is purchasing farms, purchasing those water rights with a plan in the future to put a covenant on those water rights that we want to protect those farms or farming operations. We want them to continue using that water so that we can exchange upon it. It would still be used for farming. We would not be using that water for anything else other than that purpose. So moving back to this, the record of decision is anticipated in late 2019 or early next year, and that's really the final permit from the federal government, the Army Corps of Engineers, to let us construct this project. Is this working anymore? It doesn't seem like it is.
You want this?
Yeah.
it's working. There's a little light now. Whoa. We're getting this technology figured out. By the end of the meeting, it'll be all sorted.
Yeah, everyone will hear what you're saying.
Exactly. So Director Applegate touched on this, but that fish and wildlife mitigation and enhancement plan is something that's really important to this project, and that was a lot of effort and collaboration done between the state government, the Army Corps of Engineers, and our staff to really develop this plan. It's approved by the state of Colorado. Some of the components of this project, or components of this mitigation and enhancement plan, include fish passage and enhancements, so trying to get it exactly right. Nice. So allowing fish to pass more clearly through the Poudre River, and getting different structures in there that, instead of impeding fish flow, will allow fish to move through the river more easily. Additionally, we have a wildlife habitat conservation area that we're putting in as part of this project. We have peak flow operations programs, so that will allow high flows in the spring to run past. We won't be diverting any flow into Glade Reservoir for usually the 3 peak days each year. We'll be letting that flow go by to really help clean out the river. Additionally, we have an adaptive management plan that we've been working quite a bit with Fort Collins on setting that program up. And that'll be a continuous program to really, if anything comes up, any issues in the river, we can adapt, use different methods to help the river. And then that conveyance refinement, which I'll touch on in a minute. This plan has over $50 million committed to all of these various mitigation and enhancement pieces of the project. And over 90% of that is within Larimer County or partially within Larimer County. So that's really the main benefit of this mitigation enhancement plan. These benefits are going to be located in Larimer County. So I want to jump into the water pipelines and conveyance pieces of the project a little bit more. Again, this is one of the 3 components that were identified in the MOU to really dive into, and that'll be part of this IGA. So before I get into pipeline routing, wanted to touch on really the water down the river in the Poudre. NISP will be adding flow year-round into the Poudre. It's 18 CFS during the winter and 25 CFS during the summer months. This will increase flows in the Poudre 8 out of 12 months in regular years and 10 out of 12 months in dry years, improving flows through this section of the river. And a lot of analysis really went into how far down the river we can go with this water, where we can pick the water up, and then also the amount of water that's practical to send through it. So the intake location, so the very end of that green line, just downstream of the Lincoln Street gauge there, that's where we'll be taking the water out. And so the EIS, our environmental impact statement, really analyzed what's the furthest point down the river that the quality can be maintained for municipal use. And when I say quality, really once we hit that point and the Mulberry Reclamation Plant feeds into the river, we also have different stormwater projects that are feeding into the river there. We have really a degradation in quality. There's a lot of solids that get added to the river, high carbon content. Additionally, with wastewater plants, there's also pathogens, emerging contaminants you have to worry about. So that's really kind of the furthest point down the river that was established as a safe spot to pull the water out for municipal use. Additionally, the amount of water was really looked at. We wanted to make sure we were adding a beneficial impact to the river. We didn't just want to send 1 or 2 CFS that just evaporates down the river. This amount of water allows the aquatic species and wildlife in the area to actually have a benefit with the 18 to 25 CFS. And we also wanted to see what can the project participants really commit to. I say this is a 40,000 acre-feet yearly yield project. That doesn't mean we'll be using that full yield every year. In dry years we will be, but in wet years we'll be conserving that. So wanted to commit to amount of water that we can do every year. And so you might hear that and think, that's great. Why not just send all of this water down the river instead of building this pipeline up north? But there's a few reasons we can't do that. We still need the northern tier pipeline. That's what we're calling that northern piece of the pipeline.
for a few reasons. The biggest one being just for in case of an emergency. This is a municipal water supply. If there's anything that happens inside that river, if there's a flood, if there's a fire, if there's an oil spill, we cannot use that water. And we have people that are relying on this water every single day. So that's the biggest reason. But there's a few other reasons as well. It costs additional energy to really get that water out of the river. When we're flowing from the reservoir, we don't have to have another pump station to get it to our participants. It can flow by gravity all the way to our participants. We actually have to pump it out of the river since the river is lower than our reservoir, utilizing additional energy. And also the capacity that we chose is kind of based on the site constraints. So where we have to pull this water out upstream of that Mulberry Reclamation Plant only has so much room for a pump station. And then getting that water out east, that pipeline route, really kind of on the east side of Fort Collins, is a congested area. So we wanted to size that pipeline to where we can actually fit it in there with all of the other existing utilities that are in that corridor. So now I wanted to get into the kind of pipeline alignment study that was done. I'm not going to go through, there's a full 70-page route analysis that was technical memo number 3. I'm not going to go through that in detail today. If you want to at future meetings, we can, but for this one, just want to do a really brief overview. For Larimer County, these pipelines range in size from 32 inches up to 54 inches in diameter. So to build that, the first thing that we looked at before we started evaluating routes was how much room do we need? And really that means about 100 feet of working space. That's 60 foot of permanent easement, so easement that Northern Water would own in perpetuity. So we install the pipe and then use that easement in the future to maintain it. And then an additional 40 feet that's used just during the construction period and then reverts completely back to the landowner afterwards. And this just shows a cut section of what that looks like and kind of what different areas are used for. Oh, too far. So one of the things with our pipeline alignment study that we did is really come up with a long list of criteria that we're trying to look at. What we're trying to do when we come up with our route analysis is how can we minimize impacts to both public resources and private resources. So we have a long list of criteria that we developed, including looking at traffic impacts, looking at landowner impacts, occupied dwellings that are within a certain percentage or within a certain distance from the pipeline, looking at a variety of natural area impacts, wetland impacts. We make sure we're trying to minimize as many of those as possible with our different routes. And then for each different area of the pipeline, we divided it into segments and then looked at different routes for each of those segments. So this is that northern tier pipeline just as an example, and shows all the various routes that were analyzed in order to get to our preferred route. So this shows our preferred routing alternative. You can see kind of the 3 different pieces of our alignment, that northern tier in red. That's the 48 to 54 inch diameter pipeline. The blue one is the Pruder diversion pipeline, so that pipeline carrying water from the river. It's a 32 inch diameter pipeline. And then we have our county line pipeline, which kind of hops back and forth between Larimer and Weld County on the east side. So through this, we're kind of calling this our draft final alignment. We are working with Timnath, Windsor, Johnstown through this project and trying to figure out exactly what their needs are. We've had multiple meetings with them, but continue to meet with them and also meet with various developers to learn more about some of the projects that are going on there. And then also through our public engagement process, we're going to be talking more to the public, talking to various landowners, and kind of see what tweaks we might need to make to this alignment when different things come up. So last thing I wanted to talk about on pipelines is something that is really the most important piece to the pipeline, the reclamation after the pipeline's done. Pipeline's really a temporary impact if you can restore it correctly and really make sure that that land gets restored back to where it was before. Pipelines are messy. It's dirty to construct that. Construction projects are messy, and we're not going to lie about that. It's a messy project, but we have a lot of experience in reclaiming pipelines in areas. That top picture is an area where a pipeline was installed, and you can't tell anymore where it is. And those 2 bottom pictures are kind of photos of our recent construction project that's actually under construction right now, the Southern Water Supply Project 2. So we understand that reclamation is a very important part of the project. So we work with landowners to develop individual reclamation plans with each individual landowner. And we work with what kind of fencing do you need, what kind of livestock do you have in there, what kind of seeding are you interested in, what the needs of that specific property are. If you have an irrigated field and a non-irrigated field, make sure we delineate that and really work with each landowner to get that implemented. All of our easement deeds require us to put the property back to existing or better condition. So if there's something that happens after construction and it's not getting the productivity that it's supposed to be getting, if something's not right, we come back in there and fix it. We want to be a good neighbor whenever we work with different landowners and continue to get the property back to where it needs to be. So with that, if you have any specific questions on the pipeline, I'd be happy to answer that now, or Christy can come up here and talk about the next two components.
Questions from the board on the pipeline, potential pipeline? Commissioner Cabals.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Stephanie. That northern tier pipeline, what is the route? Is that county road? Where is that?
It is not a county road. It is north of Douglas Road. Yeah. This shows all of them, so it's a little difficult. It's a middle route that's in there. Let's see. It's really more of the blue route that goes through that area and the orange.
In your next slide, if you advance one more, is that the red line is your preferred line?
Yes, that's correct.
And so for the commissioner's edification, what county roads would that align with?
It is north of Douglas Road. I'm looking at
South of Cobb Lake.
South of Cobb Lake, south of County Road 56.
It goes north, so it must hit 56 at some point. Is that true? Or Douglas Road? Is that Douglas Road, that long?
So we're north of Douglas Road. I'm sorry, I don't know the roadways enough.
Mike, Mark. And he'll come up.
If you know the roads, Mark, you got it.
He does.
A portion of it is County Road 56 around the reservoirs, and then it drops down to County Road 52 headed east to the county line.
Thank you, Mark. All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephanie.
Again, my name is Christy Coleman. I'm a water resources engineer with Northern Water, and I'd like to take a few minutes of your time to go over the remaining two local elements of the Northern Integrated Supply Project that are the topics of the agreement we're negotiating. The first is the relocation of US Highway 287. The footprint of Glade Reservoir is located on the existing Highway 287 alignment, and as a result, about 7 miles of US Highway 287 north of Ted's Place is being relocated to the purple alignment shown on this exhibit. The highway is being developed as a 2-lane arterial with room for a future 4-lane cross-section. The preliminary design for this project is already underway. That's intentional. We want to be able to go into construction and complete construction on this highway before Glade Reservoir is completed, and that's intentional to avoid a closure of the state highway and displacement of traffic onto other roads. As design continues, Northern Water will work with CDOT and adjacent property owners and Larimer County to ensure that proper access is provided to all parcels impacted by this project. The primary concept behind this would be to develop a frontage road that would allow multiple parcels to access the highway at one access point. Additionally, 35 or acre or larger parcels typically have simplified water well permitting standards. Any right-of-way acquisitions that would reduce parcel sizes below this 35-acre threshold would be completed using a minor land division process in coordination with Larimer County staff and staff at the Colorado Division of Water Resources to maintain those well permitting standards for those parcels moving forward. A route study for this relocation was completed as part of the project's environmental impact statement. As part of that process, various alternatives were presented in an alternative screening open house. This purple alignment was the preferred and chosen alternative. This alternative was also vetted through the public as part of 3 public comment periods associated with the environmental impact statement in 2008, 2015, and 2018. And it was also a part of 2 public hearing sessions in 2008 and 2015. If there aren't any questions, I'll move on to our last component. Okay, Glade Reservoir provides an opportunity to develop land-based and water-based recreation in Larimer County. These pictures show you what the reservoir will look like on the bottom picture. It's a view looking north, and on the top picture, it's a view of the reservoir looking south. As you can see, there's a large surface area. There will be up towards 1,600 acres of recreatable area, water area available on this reservoir when it's developed. To promote the development of recreation facilities, Northern Water is not only allowing recreation at no cost on this facility, but is committed to a series of 9 public recreation facilities to help enhance the development of recreation at this location. The types of recreation opportunities would be similar to those that we already have at Horsetooth Reservoir and Carter Lake, including motorized boating, hiking, and developed campgrounds. A conceptual recreation plan has been developed, which provides a concept for providing amenities. It's meant to be a starting point for recreation area development discussions. It includes this conceptual recreation map that has several important features. Does this have a pointer? Oh, shoot. All right, right there. The first feature is a visitor center. It's listed as number 4. We are also committed to paving a left abutment road with safety features. We are providing 170 acres for the development of recreation. That's everything in the orange boundary. We're going to construct a boat ramp. We're going to rough grade campground sites. That's all of the green bubbles. We're committing to constructing an upper parking lot to provide good access for boats and recreators to the reservoir itself. We're constructing a north trailhead parking lot. That's number 15. It's located on the north side of the reservoir. It will connect the north side of the reservoir by a trail down to the southeast corner of the reservoir in this entire recreation area. And we're also constructing a 1 to 200 car parking lot in this location. The intent of this parking lot is to relieve traffic congestion in Pooner Canyon by providing an opportunity for carpooling for anyone, but specifically we're targeting recreation vendors. And then we've worked with Colorado Parks and Wildlife to develop a plan to stock the reservoir as a cool water fishery and to develop necessary hatchery capacity to facilitate that. So as you can see, these are some sizable commitments. In total, the cost of these commitments is estimated to be over $9 million. And to be perfectly honest, this cost estimate is starting to be dated. So the value of these commitments is probably over $9 million, which represents a substantial commitment by Northern Water to recreation in Larimer County. As we developed this conceptual recreation plan, we reviewed the Larimer County's 2017 Reservoirs Parks Master Plan. We want to make sure we were consistent with Larimer County's goals for recreation moving forward. The development of Glade Reservoir Recreation meets demand for and provides access to recreation opportunities, including the hard-to-develop water-based recreation facilities, which expansion of which is called for in the master plan. Because Glade Reservoir Recreation is well suited to provide additional recreation options and capacity in Larimer County, it's actually identified in the master plan as a future park strategy. More specifically, Glade Reservoir is well positioned to provide a wide range of recreation activities. Of the 32 activities listed in the master plan as desired activities at reservoirs, Glade Reservoir could provide 26 or over 80%. Northern Water will partner with a third party to manage recreation facilities. Larimer County, Colorado Parks and Wildlife, and a third-party concessionaire are being considered. This approach was developed over a series of meetings with county staff and management and is the result of that combined dialogue and consensus on how to move forward.
Christy, we have a question.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Any of these facilities, will they be made accessible to persons with disabilities? Could you speak to that? And also, would there be options for people to get to these recreational facilities without having to drive?
Okay. And the answer to ADA accessibility is yes, of course. It's a requirement in most building codes, and we would follow building codes and land development standards for the facilities that are being developed.
Does that mean there could be fishing piers that are accessible to people in wheelchairs, or perhaps trails that might be accessible to folks in wheelchairs?
Yes, the design of the facilities has not proceeded to the point where those details have been designed yet, but yes, it could be incorporated.
And will there be options for getting there without driving? Like a shuttle system or a bus system, I don't know.
Yes, and the answer to that is there's no reason why we couldn't look into that, but we also haven't progressed far enough into the process to look into those details. Okay, great. And so we will be working with a third-party manager to manage our recreation facilities. Parts of the development of the facilities that we'll discuss with them are the design of the amenities, extent of funding between Northern Water and the facility manager, financial analyses and planning on how to make the project pay for itself, designing methods to address security needs.
Christy, hang on.
I have one question. Can you talk about the pros and cons of a third-party manager rather than having Larimer County Parks be a manager? Was that considered?
I think all of them are on the table. A third-party manager could have pros in that they have potentially easier and more flexible staffing regimes. They could have negative aspects of they have more of a profit incentive for their rate structures. And so I don't think a third party, as opposed to either Larimer County or Colorado Parks and Wildlife, would be considered better. They probably come with a whole slew of pluses and minuses with the approach that they would take.
Is Larimer County or Colorado Parks and Wildlife manager, is that an option that is on the table?
Yes, of course. Yes. Okay, and then we'd also work with that agency to develop phasing and timing to implement the recreation features. So we think recreation at Glade Reservoir provides a significant benefit to Larimer County. It provides an opportunity to develop a brand new outdoor water-based recreation reservoir. The recreation commitments that we've just described provide over $9 million of funding to develop recreation infrastructure and a cool water fishery. Reservoir recreation will bring tourism and economic opportunities to businesses in Larimer County and the associated additional sales tax revenues. Development of Glade Reservoir Recreation is estimated to provide between $13 and $30 million a year in economic benefit, as studied and identified in the environmental impact statement. then I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Additional questions for Christy this time? See none? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So Leslie, the PowerPoint presentations that we've just seen, the board has not seen these, I don't think, at any time prior to this meeting, nor anything that Rob may be doing. Are these going to go up on our website? Can you put those up on the website so folks can access those in the community?
Yes, we can do that.
Very good, thanks.
I had a PowerPoint, but the computer lost it, so I'm just going to have to speak from my notes. I will get it up and get it posted, but it will summarize. It'll be a summary of what we've got. So I need to talk about the process, basically. Back in 2013-14, the board gave direction to staff to look at amending the areas and activities regulations of the county to include water reservoirs. And we went around and around on that with a working group of participants and with the board and the planning commission, and finally adopted regulations that speak to siting of new water storage reservoirs, and they were adopted in 2015. Part of the conversation with that regulation adoption was that adding the provisions for entering into a memorandum of understanding and possibly pursuing an intergovernmental agreement as a part of the 1041 regulations. We included the original language in 1041 when we originally adopted them in 2006 to allow for an intergovernmental agreement between two public entities for a project, which would take the place of a 1041 permit, but not ignore the process for that. In early 2016, Northern approached county staff to enter into a memorandum of understanding to pursue an intergovernmental agreement. The boards of the Northern Board and the Board of County Commissioners executed that memorandum of understanding in August of 2016. It laid out a time frame that looked an awful lot like the traditional 1041 process. We lost that schedule pretty quickly, unfortunately, because everybody got busy, and so we got very behind on the schedule. That memorandum of understanding was recently renewed by both the Northern Board and the Board of County Commissioners in the last couple of weeks. It sets forth a time frame and process to get to closure on an intergovernmental agreement. It also does articulate, however, more clearly an off-ramp that if either party chooses not to pursue the intergovernmental agreement, that we would back into a 1041 permit process. And exactly how that happens depends on if and when the exit occurs. But we would have to pursue the more formal 1041 permit if that did occur. The code also requires review of pipelines, as you well know. And so there are pipelines associated with this project. So there are two principal aspects to the 1041 intergovernmental agreement. One is the reservoir and its appurtenances, and the other is the conveyances. Because of the multiple aspects of this, the county staff believed it was appropriate to enter into an intergovernmental agreement rather than a traditional permit because there were so many moving pieces to the proposal. So we are now headed down a path where we are going to take this to the intergovernmental agreement and process to our planning commission in August. We will then have another joint meeting with both boards in September, the 23rd of September, to get more into the meat of the aspects of the technical information that Stephanie and Christy presented to you this afternoon. And then we have one programmed in September, and then we will, as a staff, work together to try to come to a final intergovernmental agreement through the fall, and ultimately enter into a public hearing process January of 2020. How many hearings that takes, it's anticipated to be a joint hearing with the Planning Commission and the Board of County Commissioners, and then ultimately both boards, if it's acceptable, will approve, adopt, and sign an intergovernmental agreement. So that schedule will include, right now we have done a preliminary referral of the technical memos that Northern has provided us to agencies. We will need to do more outreach to the public as we get farther down and get more detailed information in terms of notice and provision. There are, the county has a hot topic webpage for NISP. Northern has their NISP talk, and I believe they're going to speak to that later in the public engagement plan. But ultimately, you all will have a public hearing, and you know me, I like lots of night meeting. No. That public hearing will be, however long it takes to get through a public hearing process, but that will not start until January. January coming up. If in fact, we believe there's enough room in the schedule, although calendars get tight as you get farther into the fall, that if a substantive discussion between the boards on the technical elements of the IGA need another meeting or conversation between you all, we will add that into the schedule. Or I don't want to push January back, but that may have to happen depending on how calendars work. So that's the overview. I mean, the code, excuse me, adopted in 2015 requires a review of water reservoirs and water pipeline elements for 1041. In the negotiations for the MOU, because of the federal permitting process, the IGA is going to need to provide some acknowledgement of the reservoir itself. But we were focusing in for the IGA on those three more local elements, which was the direction the board gave the staff when we went through the adoption process for this piece of the 1041 regulations. That's really all I've got. I mean, the schedule was negotiated with both Northern and county staff. It's a little ambitious, but we're trying to get to closure and get folks understanding what's going on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Rob. I have a few questions. One, and maybe the Northern folks will get into this, and they explain a little more about the NISP talk on your website. I'd like to better understand what you're doing to continue online public engagement process to obtain feedback. So I think that'll be answered later. Thank you. Wondering, with regard to the development of the provisions of the IGA, will that be available so that the public can review that and offer comments, or is that a confidential document, or how does that work?
The contents of the technical memos that Northern provided us have already been posted to the county's NISP website, so all that information is currently available. We have not figured out exactly how we're going to do mailings or notice to property owners on that are affected by the elements of this proposal, but we will be reaching out from a county perspective to solicit their input. We're going to rely on our webpage, and I think Leslie can speak to that more than I on that particular question.
What I'm wondering, Rob, is that before we have our proposed September 23rd meeting with the various governing bodies to discuss the draft IGA, will the public have access to the details of that IGA so they can provide comments and?
Commissioner Kafalis, yes, the goal was to make that information publicly available so that we could hear comments and you could hear comments and so on. So the commitment, I think, on our side and probably on both sides is to make the information as open and transparent as possible as we work our way through the various drafts.
Thank you, Leslie. And does that mean that the 2016 MOU is currently on the website as well as this amendment to that 2016 MOU?
If it's not, we'll make sure that it gets added.
I think that's all I have for now. Thank you very much for indulging.
Questions from the Northern Board? No? Very good. Thank you, Rob. Okay. Come up here next. Where are we at here? Okay.
All right, thank you. Okay. So public engagement is an important part of the Northern Integrated Supply Project. The Northern Integrated Supply Project is commonly referred to as NISP. If you hear me say that in the presentation, that's what I mean. Throughout NISP's history, we've made a conscious effort to engage in public tours, public meetings, open houses, alternatives analyses, to help tell our story about our project, and as importantly, to get public input on how best to develop our project. We've done this when we've had important milestones like EIS public comment periods, when we've developed mitigation and enhancement plans, as we've developed individual project components, or as we've wanted to do outreach on the project as a whole. This is the front page of our Northern Integrated Supply Project website. It's part of our outreach effort for the project as a whole. In fact, over the last 3 years alone, we've had over 60 outreach events that we've completed for NISP and the local elements that are the topic of our IGA. That's a sizable commitment to outreach. However, to enhance the content and integrity of our agreement, we've started a new public outreach effort specific to the 3 local elements that are the subject of our agreement. This effort is a combination of online public engagement platform NISPtalk.com, and this is the front page of that platform, and one-on-one meetings. We've completed outreach to individuals who could be infected by these local elements by sending postcards to them. These groups include properties within 500 feet of the proposed pipeline or the Highway 287 relocation, or ditch or reservoir companies that could have pipeline crossings. We are reaching out to recreation groups in Larimer County that have been identified in Larimer County's Reservoir Parks Master Plan. And we've reached out to properties within 1 mile of the reservoir or recreation area and the Bonner Peak neighborhood. The public engagement platform NISPtalk.com is being utilized to engage and listen to the public, inform the community about the facts of our project, and display important content and get feedback. Different pieces of the project have various means of communication and engagement. We've developed specific sites to tell people about the NISP project in general, to provide information on pipeline routes, to talk about our reservoir recreation plan and our Highway 287 realignment, and to talk about this agreement, its scope, and how it's going to play out. Content is tailored to each of the sites. Here you can see the interactive pipeline map that allows landowners to zoom in right to the piece of property that they're interested in, geospatially reference a point, and provide comments. That's what the little green upside down raindrops are, people providing us feedback. We've posted the recreation concept map that we've just discussed. I haven't included it here just to not be repetitive. We also have recreation surveys and quick polls that we have on our recreation page to get feedback on how best to develop recreation. Most sites have document libraries for the members of the public who are interested in a deep dive. There's the resources and information they need to do that. We have the ability to provide feedback on every page. For questions and answers, we post the question and our answer back to the public so everyone can benefit from that discussion. And then obviously we have descriptions of the projects available as well. So to date, we've had over 700 site visits, and we think that's great. We also have almost 60 people that have answered questions or provided feedback or asked questions. So we're excited about that. We think it's a good start, but we obviously want more feedback, and so we want to see that feedback number grow as this process plays out. We're using multiple approaches to get the general public up to speed on NISP.com. We're using Northern Water social media accounts, and Larimer County staff have been great partners to us in helping to get the news out on NISP.com by using their social media platforms. We're using our electronic newsletters at Northern Water. Our participants that are located in Larimer County, that's the Fort Collins-Loveland Water District in the town of Windsor, are helping us get the news out about this engagement platform. And we've developed posters, and we've put those posters in public libraries throughout Larimer County. We've put them at the marina at Horsetooth Lake. We've put them at fly fishing shops and sporting goods stores so that we can get the news out to just the general public about what we're up to. Northern Water also values the opportunities to meet face-to-face with interested landowners, stakeholders, and homeowners associations. Northern Water is available through a call or an email to set up a one-on-one meeting to help inform and engage the public on the project. As part of this effort, staff is going to stay after this meeting to talk to anyone who's interested in giving us feedback, to ask questions. We have flyers with us that kind of describe what's on NISP.com and how to access it, or how to contact staff. If today is not convenient, then let us know what a convenient day is, and we'd be happy to talk to you. And that's it. Do you have any questions?
Other questions about participation? Colleagues? This time, no. Very good. Thank you, Christy.
And then Commissioner Donnelly,
Yes.
if I may add, I'll stand here so that I don't have my back to everybody. The county staff's role in providing public engagement opportunities is a little bit different in that we're doing this in the service of really hearing from the public that you feel like you need to hear from in order to move forward with crafting an IGA. So we are hosting information on the webpage. We provide the technical information. We'll make the drafts available. We also have noted, and you have in your MOU, the letter, that there will be drafts available for public review in advance of these events. I know you had expressed some interest at one point in having these joint board meetings also open to the public, which we've made open today. We will accept written comments and other comments, and we will look for ways at the September 23rd meeting also to have a more robust kind of engagement that people can share comments about the draft agreement at that point so that you can hear back from the public about what they're thinking about or ideas that they have to move toward a better agreement from their perspective. We do have that event September 23rd, the next one of these types of events, and then the Planning Commission will also have some time in October that they can hear from the community. So these are all more informal types of events and ways to hear from people. And then, as Rob had mentioned in his presentation too, then as we start to move into the more formal stages of the hearings, that would be when people would also have an opportunity to testify in a formal public hearing before you. So those are some of the things that we're hosting on the county side. But we're not really the leaders of this project. We're really here in support of you in advancing any public input or information that you need to feel comfortable about this.
Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Leslie. And I want to make sure that as I read the amendment to the MOU outlining the timeframe, it suggests that the public will not be able to testify until we actually get into more official hearings. Is that correct? Because the meeting on the 23rd, meetings perhaps through mid-October, it's mostly that they can provide written comments and also attend these meetings and observe. Is that correct? Yes.
That meeting is not fully designed yet, so if you have particular input or ideas or things that you would like to see happen at that meeting, we can do it in multiple ways. We can have more of an open house kind of format where people can leave comments, talk to staff, talk to you. We could design something that's a bit more interactive where you can hear from people. We can design it more formally as a hearing where people can line up at the microphone and talk for 2 minutes or 3 minutes each. So that's really dependent on what you would find useful.
Yeah, I think we would want to visit a little bit more on that. Leslie, you mentioned there would be an event with the Planning Commission would hold to hear from folks. I mean, it's kind of a chicken and egg thing. You can't really have a hearing before you have a document to comment on. But I think, I don't know, speaking as myself, and I think the board will want some type of event with the public, an open house thing, probably less formal than a hearing with 2-minute limits and all that. I think we would like an event like that too. I don't know where that would fit in the schedule, but maybe an open house format or an open discussion format where we can hear from citizens about their experiences with the input platform, which I think is very good. I think we would like that before we get to the public hearing stage. I think that would be a very good idea, just personally.
One last thing. Thanks, Mr. Chair. Thank you for this discussion. And perhaps, Leslie, on the website, or even those who are in attendance and listening today, we could solicit input from the public asking what they think might be the most effective way to have that kind of discussion dialogue. So I'm not sure if we're actually putting questions up there on the website, but I'd like to put out there that we would welcome input on how to do these upcoming meetings in an effective way that allows for dialogue and open discussions. Thank you.
Good. That conclude your remarks. So the final item on the agenda is Commissioner and Director discussion. I don't know that there's much. The presentations were very good and very thorough, and I think we all gained a much greater understanding of the projects and the areas where additional agreement and conversation are needed. So is there anything on behalf of the board that they would like to ask of the Northern Board of Directors, President Applegate, or the members of the board? But I know we will have some closing comments, and I assume President Applegate, you might have some comments as well, or no? You don't. We didn't give you a microphone, so you can't say anything. See? Do you have some comments? I know. She turned it off, maybe. Did you turn it off? Oh, she did.
Just in closing remark is just basically reiterating our board is committed to working with you, the commissioners, with the staff in moving this thing forward. I think we're trying to be as proactive as we can. We know that there's a lot of concern in the public and they want to get information. You're going to see a lot of transparency. We've got nothing to hide. You're going to hear exactly how we want to put this together, and you're going to be given a chance to give input to us. So you've got that commitment from the board, and we'll be there.
Good. Thank you. Any other members of the board like to make any comments? No? Very good. Commissioners, I know you guys will always talk. Would you like to begin?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, gentlemen, for being here and for staff. I just want to make sure it's clear that regardless of what you may know about my past, I'm entering into these deliberations with an open mind, and I will be asking a lot of hard questions. And for example, one of those questions that I'd like to put out there is I realize that the focus of our engagement, the elements are really focused on those three areas: recreational, the relocation of Highway 287, and the pipeline routing, of course. But I'm wondering, is it appropriate? Can we bring into the discussions other elements that may not be directly related? I pose that question. I'm not sure if that is appropriate or how that works.
Yeah, Rob, do you mind taking a stab at it, or Leslie? Go get the microphone. You got to get back up again.
Well, let's see what he does. I can give you kind of my opinion of that. We adopted, and I was going to say this, and I will talk more about this when we get a chance to make my comments, but we adopted 1041 regulations and the IGA possible route with specific criteria and specific areas that we have authority on, and we only really have legal authority on those areas that are outlined in our land use code 1041 regulations as I read it. I think as representatives of the citizens, we always have the opportunity to express, convey, amplify concerns that we hear to the Northern Board as well. That's kind of above and beyond and outside of the legal authority that our 1041 regulations give us. That's my understanding.
Bill, do you want to add anything?
That's
Why don't you introduce yourself? Yeah. Folks might not know who you are.
Bill Rousseau with the Larimer County Attorney's Office. I think Commissioner Johnson, I would just echo what you said. Our 1041 regulations have certain limits. It grants the county certain authorities to touch on subjects, and there are certainly subjects that are relevant to this project that may be on that authority. I think there's an opportunity to discuss those. And if there are agreement on those topics, then certainly the two entities can move forward with those agreements. And so there is a legal authority that the county has, and then there are aspects of this project that likely reach over that authority. But I think the commitment to this point, as I understand it, has been to touch on things like recreation and things of that nature that are a benefit for the community. So hopefully that answers your question.
Additional questions, Commissioner? Do you have any closing remarks you'd like to make at this time?
Just that, it's just to reinforce what I said a moment ago, and I'm looking at everyone's body language, and I just want to reiterate and reinforce that I'm in these deliberations with an open mind, and that is one reason why I will be very vigilant and ask tough questions, and I hope relevant questions.
Very good. Closing remarks.
Yeah, I guess two or three things I want to say is I really appreciate this meeting. I appreciate you guys sharing with us the outreach that you have done, much more extensive than I was aware of, and I think very high tech and very transparent, and I think very helpful for us to look at your blog and see what kind of comments you have received as well. That's always helpful for us to get information in different ways. This is a good meeting because this is really a new process for all of us. We've never gone through this process with the Northern before, so we're kind of learning as we go along. I have two or three things I want to say. One very simple thing is, one thing that concerns me is to hear that it's a minor point and it's inside baseball for us, but occasionally we have done joint meetings with the Planning Commission where we adopt things that are pretty routine. Actually, the comprehensive plan ended up being pretty routine because there was a lot of agreement on that, and I think the joint hearing worked very well. We've done it on a couple other code things. I don't think this would be a good thing for us to have a joint adoption hearing with the Planning Commission, and I need to think more about that. But, it's kind of, John, like we're in the legislature. When a bill goes through the House, people have a chance to hear it, have a chance to discuss it, gets in the media, and then it's got to go through the Senate side. And a lot of times we've had things come to us that people said, well, I didn't know there was a Planning Commission hearing. I didn't hear about this until I read about the Planning Commission hearing. So our legislative process kind of has that dual two-chamber approach of two separate hearings, and I think there's a lot of advantage in that. And something that's this complicated, we may want to think about doing that separately because it gives the public two opportunities to testify, gets them a chance to hear other points of view, and then sometimes people come to us and say, you know, I heard something at Planning Commission, changed my mind, and doing them both at the same time might not be the best process thing for us. One of the big things for me is the recreation component. That is extremely important to me. I live at the south end of Horsetooth Reservoir. I drive by the reservoir every day. I walk over there weekly. It is the second most visited reservoir, I believe, in the state of Colorado. Last weekend, they had to stop boats from coming onto the reservoir. Boats were lined up. They couldn't go onto the reservoir until somebody else came off. Boats were turned away. It is overused. It's overloved. The campground is always oversubscribed to during the summer months. People love Horsetooth Reservoir. My house wouldn't be where it is today if we didn't have Horsetooth Reservoir. I can't imagine people living in Larimer County. I can't imagine being here without Horsetooth Reservoir. Everybody I know loves Horsetooth Reservoir, loves the recreational opportunities. Horsetooth Mountain open space right by the reservoir is our most visited open space. It's frequently the parking lot is full by 9:30 on weekends, and it's overloved too. People in Larimer County love recreation. It's very important to them. We're a growing community. By 2050, just 30 years from now, there'll be 50% more, 55% more people here than there are now. That's equivalent to an entire new city of Fort Collins planted in Larimer County. And a big concern of our county is how do we provide quality of life? How do we provide environmental quality? How do we provide recreation opportunities that are good quality, better, or the same as we have now when we have 150,000 more people here? So this is an opportunity, I think, probably one of the most important things that this Board of Commissioners will be involved in. Because if you think of the people that built Horsetooth Reservoir in the past and how important it is to our community, they were visionaries. They thought 50, 100 years into the future. And this decision will impact our kids, our grandkids, generations into the future. And it's very important that it be done right. So the recreational opportunities are very important to me from my perspective. The last thing I want to talk about is public participation. Public participation is extremely important to this Board of County Commissioners and previous boards of county commissioners. The Board of County Commissioners with Tom and I and Lou adopted 1041 regulations that cover this very item that we're talking about today. Before Tom and I came into office, this meeting wouldn't even have occurred. We wouldn't have public hearings. There would be one hearing in front of the Planning Commission that would be advisory to Northern Water. That's it. We decided, Tom, Lou, and I decided that we wanted to have a bigger voice for the people we represent in that process. So we put 1041 regulations into our land use code that are providing for exactly what we're doing here today. So that's how important this process is to us. Now, we also have the opportunity for an IGA process, and I've heard some people concerned that an IGA process diminishes that public participation. I would disagree. The 1041 process is a very legally constrained, it's a court process, essentially. It's technically a quasi-judicial process, but it's very much a court process. Before the decision is made, we are actually prevented by Colorado court rules from engaging in discussions with citizens about a pending hearing. We're prohibited engaging from discussions with the applicant to relay what we've heard from citizens into a plan before it comes to that public hearing. The IGA process is different. It's not a quasi-judicial process, as I understand it, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but we will have the opportunity for public discussion about an evolving an agreement. Our citizen meetings, John's community conversations can talk about that agreement. That isn't possible with the 1041 process because those are considered ex parte communications that are prohibited under Colorado court rules in a 1041 process. So I believe the IGA process, if done correctly, if done with transparency, if done with adequate opportunity for public input, actually allows us to hear more from citizens, which is why we put these regulations in our land use code to begin with. So that's what we're committed to. We will be looking for opportunities to have that input and that dialogue. That can go into shaping the agreement. That agreement will have a full public hearing process, but there will be opportunities to hear from citizens before we get to that hearings point, and we will have an opportunity to actually to change the agreement based on what we've heard. That is a significant difference, I think a significant advantage to an intergovernmental agreement process over the formal legal court quasi-judicial process of an IGA. So we can discuss with Northern like you're going to see over the next few months. I think that's a big advantage.
Thank you, Commissioner. Before I begin, I'd like to thank the members of the Board of Directors for joining us here today. And some of you made some fairly long drives, so thanks for coming to Larimer County. We hope you stay and maybe have dinner or something, spend a little money. Yeah, we wouldn't be opposed to that. I'd also like to thank the staff from Northern Water. Did an outstanding job with your presentations, and Larimer County staff for doing a tremendous job on this meeting as well. And I'd like to thank the members of the public who have turned out for this evening. I know there were probably many things you could have done, or this afternoon rather. I know there are many things you probably could have done with your afternoon rather than sitting in the courthouse, but the fact that you came out, I think, is demonstrates the importance of this project and how much people care about this. President and members of the board, there's not a doubt in my mind that NISP will be probably one of the most important, longest-lasting legacies that any of you will enjoy in your tenure as board members here. And so the gravity of that is felt by the members of this board as well. There would be very few things that will ever occur again that will have the impacts on our local economy, on efforts to keep housing affordable in northern Colorado, and on an issue that's very important to me, actually, preservation of irrigated agriculture in northern Colorado. There's very few things that will occur that will have as significant of an impact positively on those areas, I think, than the work that you do now. Commissioner Johnson is absolutely correct. We had an incident with a pipeline that was proposed by the city of Greeley in around 2008, just prior to our election to this board, to this body, where the county had not adopted 1041 regulations, and so that pipeline was allowed to go through without any kind of permitting process through the county, without any type of oversight from the county. So this Board of Commissioners at the time adopted these regulations to ensure that we would have a seat at the table, that our citizens would have a voice in what occurs here with regards to land use in their own communities. I've mentioned, it's no secret that I think there's there are many positive aspects to this project. The thing I think that we need to keep in mind, and the board needs to consider, and Northern needs to consider, is the how. There's a what we're doing, build a reservoir, and there's a how we're going to do that. And so, unlike a project that the board very recently heard, I think there's some very key distinctions with this proposal. I was excited to hear that you've done over 60 public meetings. I had a moment to look through your NISP Talk website. Pretty exciting stuff on there, and so I'm grateful to see a much greater level of interaction with the public being done with regards to this project as it moves forward. And because of that, I'm very comfortable using this IGA process rather than a more traditional 1041 permitting process. I think we have tremendous outreach that's already occurred. More will come in the future, and I think that we will end up with a much more thoroughly vetted project than what we've seen in the past with the similar types of permitting situations. And so I'm thrilled to see the good work that's done here. I'm glad to see the communication that's occurring, and I look forward to seeing that occur, additional conversations into the future. And I look for additional interactions with the folks who are here today with regards to what's proposed here. So, Board, would you like to add anything to this at this time? No, we're good. Leslie, is there any further items to come before us this afternoon?
I think that would conclude this meeting. As you mentioned, staff will be available after if there are any members of the public who would like to speak with us. You're here as well, right, on northern side. So if there are comments that people have particularly about the process, public engagement opportunities going forward, we're here to listen to that.
Very good. If nothing else, there's nothing else here for the Board of County Commissioners, the board will stand adjourned. Thanks, everyone, for coming.